12 minutes before 8 on Information Morning. Good morning, I'm Dave MacDonald. Well, the Facebook campaign against a series of ads outside convenience stores in New Brunswick has touched off a pretty lively debate with hundreds of people weighing in. Craig Norris is a photographer in Moncton. Now, he started the site. He says he doesn't like the way that Circle K is promoting a brand of slushies called Geezerade, featuring a computer-morphed images of young people turning old.
One day I was in editing a photograph of a older gentleman. He was in his 70s, and a couple of kids from our in-home daycare walked by, and when they saw the photo, one kid said, "Oh, look at the geezer," and then another kid said, "Yeah, there's a geezer on the screen," and they all started to laugh, and it just kind of made me cringe. And then next time I was at the Circle K, I noticed the poster again. I was like, oh, maybe this poster is kind of contributing to that sentiment.
That's Craig Norris. That's part of an interview that he did with my co-host, Jonna Brewer. Now, her news story, by the way, it was picked up around the world via the web, definitely creating some buzz, plenty of attention, even if much of it seems to be negative. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? We have asked Stephen Brander in to talk about that. He's co-founder of Razor Creative, which is a communications and marketing firm in Moncton. Hi, Stephen.
Good morning.
So, you're familiar with this by now, I'm sure.
Yes.
Is this a good example of there's no such thing as bad publicity?
Well, I think you have to look at it from the point of view of what they're trying to achieve, right? If this was a campaign where they were trying to get controversy, they've certainly done that. But if this is something that happened that wasn't part of the plan, then you have to sort of look at it from the point of view as, what's it saying about the overall product and their overall company.
All right, and I want to get to that in a moment. I do also want to acknowledge that us having this conversation, we continue to bring this into the public fore and sort of continue this attention that's being put on the company. I did want to ask you if your company has ever experienced anything like this kind of a backlash.
In a very small way, years ago, one of the first clients we worked on, we ran an ad in a trade publication that caused a couple of letters to be written, but that was actually a good thing because at the time we were trying to create a campaign that we want people to talk about. So creating controversy is often part of the strategy. So you're trying to push the envelope. You're trying to get people talking about it. So you're going to accept a certain amount of controversy just as part of getting people talking about your brand and about your advertising.
There may be a line at which it becomes unacceptable, though, and how do you know what that line is? How do you know when edgy and creative and provoking becomes offensive and actually does damage to the brand?
Well, I guess you have to look at this line that people talk about, and often you don't really know you've crossed the line until you've actually crossed it. And who decides what that line is, right? Because everyone has their own line. Is my line different than your line? And who decides when it gets crossed, and what are the consequences of that?
Mm-hmm. If we look at this particular campaign, and as I said, it's for slushies, okay?
Right.
Now, you know all about focusing on a target market. Is this sort of a very deliberate attempt to look at the generational schisms and really focus this on younger people?
Yeah,
kind of a wink to younger people?
Yeah, this is clearly a campaign targeted at young people who buy slushies.
Right.
Now,
I don't know too many older people who do, by the way.
No, not that many. But one of the things that you have to be very aware of is, in this particular case, it exists in an environment where other people get to see it. So yes, young people are going to see the advertising, but also, people who are older. So when you're developing a campaign, you have to make sure that you create messaging that resonates with your audience and causes them to react, but do it in such a way that you're not going to alienate other people who might frequent your store or your business.
But they must have considered that. Now, neither of us was in the boardroom or the design room when they were coming up with this or pitching ideas to the client. Surely they would have looked at this, and if so many other people reacted, it said, well, there's a potential for people to get upset about this. Is there not when you make these kinds of considerations?
Well, there are, and I guess it's, when you think about creating an edgy campaign or something that's trying to push the envelope, you have to sort of decide how close to the envelope that you want to get, and there's always that risk, right? If you're going to be edgy, what does that really mean? Because edgy is different in every category. So if you're going to try to talk to youth, you definitely need to do something that's unexpected or that's going to get their attention. And, if the byproduct of that is you're going to alienate some other people, then you have to evaluate that and determine whether that's part of the risk. But you also have to think about is this something that maybe they had no idea was going to cause controversy? They may have thought this was a great campaign, this is going to get kids in to buy the product, but not have the impact that has happened.
Is there a geographical dimension here? In other words, something that might fly in Toronto doesn't work in New Brunswick. Is that something that marketers have to be aware of?
Absolutely, and I'm not even sure in this particular case, but this could even be a campaign that was adapted from another market, for example.
I think it started in Quebec.
I believe so, yeah. So there's always that risk where you're adapting a campaign from one market and bringing it to another market, and especially if you're changing language, if you're adapting messaging from one language to another, sometimes things get lost in the translation.
Big difference in connotation, maybe.
Absolutely. So a slang word for an older person in one language, this is not always an equivalent to that in another language, so you can run into trouble there.
What about the backlash? How much risk is there to companies, not just the companies that sell the product, but companies like yourself that represent them, the potential for real problems because of Facebook, for example, people rallying against it? Does that cause a lot of concern?
Well, I guess the landscape is really different now. I mean, there's always been ads that have caused controversy, and people have always talked about ads that they've liked or haven't liked. But now, with Facebook and Twitter and other social media, there's a venue and there's a way for people to voice their outrage, and they can find other like-minded people who share their concerns. So it's very easy to create some controversy and get some bulk behind it.
And get a worldwide audience pretty quickly.
Worldwide audience. Whereas in the past, you may have written a letter, you may have told some friends, but it's very difficult to get traction. Nowadays, you can see something that offends you, take a picture with your phone, post it immediately, and the ball gets rolling.
We've got to wrap up. I want to end with a multiple choice question for you, okay?
Yep.
No wrong answer, by the way. But what do you think will be the outcome of this Geezerade campaign? A, Circle K folds the tent, pulls the posters down. B, Circle K keeps the campaign going for its natural life, however long that may be. C, Circle K renames the product Golden Age or Aid with images of active seniors casually sipping after a grueling tennis match, something like that. Or D, any way you look at it, Circle K makes bags of money and sells lots of slushies because of all the attention.
I think it's B and D.
B and D, okay. So either way, we can expect maybe to see these posters up for a while, even though a lot of people don't seem to like them. But Stephen Brander, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you. And that is Stephen Brander. He is a partner at Razor Creative, a communications and marketing firm in Moncton.